have 2 weeks to comply, so we don't know whether or not they're going to. So far, we've only gotten a press statement from the press secretary that just says that these subpoenas change nothing, and of course blames Democrats, saying they're not doing anything. But this really shows that this investigation is ramping up on Capitol Hill. This subpoena comes after a letter that was issued by the 3 committees that are conducting this investigation that was sent to Vice President Pence, requesting more documents from him, saying that they had an interest in any role he might have played in communicating messages or the president's views to Ukraine. Now, I do want to note one thing here. Before they even issued this subpoena, the White House was considering sending out a note, sending a note to Speaker Pelosi that said that they didn't have to comply with this investigation because it wasn't a real impeachment investigation, citing the fact that there hadn't been a House vote yet. So we'll keep our eyes out for that. They said it could come as early as Monday, but as you said, President Trump is doubling down. He is calling this investigation a witch hunt, and he is blaming Democrats.
And you know better than anybody, for the last 3 years, Democrat lawmakers, their deep state cronies, the fake news media, they've been colluding in their effort to overturn the presidential election. 63 million people voted, and to nullify the votes of the American people. And many African American people voted for Trump.
Now, we heard from House Speaker Pelosi last night, who insists that this is not political. Take a listen to what she had to say.
Some people say, why are you doing this? He's not worth it. To divide the country this way. I said, well, he may not be. But our Constitution is worth it. Our democracy is worth it.
And guys, it is important to remember here, we are still just at the beginning. There has not been that House vote, that official vote to launch this impeachment process. So just keep in mind, this is where we are, and it's already ugly. It's going to get much uglier. Back to you.
All right, Kristen Holmes, thanks so much. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Greece this morning, hours after defying that House subpoena to produce Ukraine documents.
Earlier this week, Pompeo, the secretary, accused lawmakers of intimidating and bullying State Department officials. CNN's Sarah Westwood has more.
Well, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo missed the deadline for a House Democrats subpoena for documents and testimony related to the now infamous phone call between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky. Now, this is the third deadline that Pompeo, the State Department, has blown through. House Democrats started seeking this testimony, these documents, September 9th. Now, Democrats wanted documents related to that phone call between Trump and Zelensky, but also documents and testimony related to the president's decision to suspend military aid to Ukraine around the time that that phone call took place. House Democrats had said that they would consider it obstruction under their impeachment inquiry if the State Department and Pompeo did not comply with this subpoena. But Pompeo issued a defiant response earlier this week, saying that he did not agree with a number of the conditions that House Democrats had laid out under their subpoena, including the fact that House Democrats did not want State Department and White House lawyers accompanying witnesses to the committee because they wanted to get the most candid testimony possible. Pompeo argued that State Department interests might not be protected if that were the case. But this just follows a long pattern of White House and administration stonewalling of Democratic requests over the past 10 months of Democratic investigations into the administration. But again, the Democrats have made clear that they will consider any stonewalling obstruction under their impeachment inquiry, and that could be included if any articles of impeachment were to be filed in the future. Sarah Westwood, CNN, Washington.
All right, Sarah, thank you for that. No shortage of things to discuss, so let's bring in Errol Lewis, political anchor for Spectrum News and CNN political commentator, and Paige Pate, a criminal and constitutional attorney. Paige, let's start with you. The White House has stonewalled just about every request from House Democrats for documents. So do these subpoenas actually have teeth? What can Democrats do if the White House just delays and this winds up in court?
Well, ultimately, Boris, I think a court is going to have to determine whether the White House, the Secretary of State, have to comply with these subpoenas. And this issue normally does not go before a court this early in an impeachment process, before the House has officially voted to have an impeachment inquiry. So I understand the White House's position, the Secretary of State's position. Look, we're not going to do anything to comply with these subpoenas until you first officially declare that we're in an impeachment process. Now, the Constitution does not require that type of vote, but I could easily see a judge requiring something formal before he enforces those subpoenas that have been served on the White House and the Secretary of State.
So, Paige, to be clear, just to follow up on that, there's no legal requirement necessarily for Democrats, for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to hold this vote on the floor of the House, but you think a judge might necessarily make that the case? He might require that.
Right. I do, Boris. I mean, there's nothing in the Constitution, there's nothing in federal law that says you have to hold an impeachment inquiry before you issue subpoenas. Congress does that all the time without having an official vote. But if you have to go to a court to enforce these subpoenas, that's not a usual thing. And judges in the past have said, look, I'm going to allow Congress a lot more latitude if they're in the middle of an impeachment inquiry. And it would be so much easier if Congress just stepped forward, at least the House, and said, that's what we're doing here. That's why these subpoenas are especially important. That's why we need them enforced.
Errol, to you, from the White House perspective, we're hearing that the impeachment response is being led by two people, senior advisor and son-in-law to the president, Jared Kushner, and his acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney. Do you think that's a sign that they don't take this impeachment inquiry as seriously as they did the Mueller probe, where they brought in just a slew of attorneys?
I think it's a sign that they do take it seriously, Boris, but it's serious in a political sense, not necessarily in a legal sense. The Mueller probe was all about trying to withhold documents, about trying to slow the process down and so forth. We're in an odd position here because normally you'll get whistleblower testimony and you'll get documents and you'll issue subpoenas, and it's all supposed to lead up to the smoking gun, the key conversation. Well, in this case, the president himself is not only describing those conversations, he's defending them, and he's making more of them publicly. So to a certain extent, Congress is really sort of filling in the blanks and trying to figure out the extent to which others were involved. What was the role of the Secretary of State? What was the possible role of the Vice President in all of this stuff? But the underlying, the most explosive and most, frankly, impeachable facts are actually not in dispute here, which is a little unusual.
Errol, I want to stay with you as to the question of this potential second whistleblower. The New York Times reporting that a second official with more direct information about Trump's attempts to sway the Ukrainian leadership, that they may come forward. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, here again, I mean, we're just kind of filling in the outlines of a picture that the president has already drawn. It sounds, though, as if this second possible whistleblower would be more credible, would have more information, might name more names, and more fully complete the picture of how all of this went about. And what's interesting, Boris, is that it's the reaction in some ways that's almost the most important part of this. The fact that career officials were alarmed, were startled, were led to try and both memorialize and also inform others about what they consider to be improper and possibly criminal conduct. Over and over again, we're seeing it. We're seeing referrals to the Justice Department. We're seeing whistleblower complaints. We're seeing apparently furtive actions by the White House to try and cover up some of this stuff. Clearly something is wrong, and this second whistleblower might further explain that to us.
Now, Paige, the White House, the administration can try to stonewall when it comes to providing documents to Congress, but having a second whistleblower, having a whistleblower in general, it's tougher for the president to try to stop them from providing information to Congress, right?
That's true, and I understand that the Inspector General's rationale for corroborating this, or at least finding credibility with the first whistleblower complaint, was corroborated by this second whistleblower, who I think has at least talked to part of Congress in one of the Intelligence Committees. So the more people that come forward, the more evidence is stacked up, and the stronger Congress's case is to pursue an impeachment.
All right, Paige Pate, we'll see you in the next hour for our legal brief. Errol Lewis, we'll see you again in just a couple minutes. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So here's a question for you. Is Bernie Sanders healthy enough for the campaign trail? New questions about the senator's health, about his age, after doctors reveal he actually suffered a heart attack earlier this week.
Also, a potential phone hacking scandal involving Prince Harry's voicemail. Details ahead.
16 minutes past the hour right now, and Senator Bernie Sanders is promising that he'll return to the campaign trail. This is despite doctors confirming he did, in fact, have a heart attack earlier this week.
Yeah, Sanders left the Las Vegas hospital yesterday, and in a video posted online, he reassured his supporters that he isn't going anywhere.
Hello, everybody. We're in Las Vegas. I just got out. I'm feeling so much better. I just want to thank all of you for the love and warm wishes that you sent to me. See you soon on the campaign trail.
CNN Ryan Nobles has more for us. Good morning, Ryan.
Boris and Christy, Bernie Sanders left a Las Vegas hospital on Friday afternoon after spending 2.5 days there being treated for a heart attack. Sanders, with his wife by his side, waved to a crowd of people outside the Desert Springs Hospital Medical Center. Sanders, as we mentioned, spent 2.5 days there after experiencing chest pains Tuesday night during an event in Las Vegas. Two of the doctors that treated him put out a statement after he was released that described his hospital stay as uneventful and said that he had a, quote, good expected progress. They confirmed that Sanders had 2 stents placed in an artery to combat a blockage, but also said that he was diagnosed with a myocardial infarction, which is the clinical term for a heart attack. Now, Sanders will travel to his home of Burlington, Vermont, and take some time off the campaign trail, but he's promised that he's going to return in time for the CNN debate, which takes place on October 15th. Now, inside the campaign, I've been told there was really no real deliberation as to whether or not he would continue his run for president. Sanders, who felt immediately better after the procedure to have those stents put in, felt so much better and was ready to get back on the trail. But while Sanders feels better and his doctors have said that his prognosis is good, this will no doubt be an issue for him going forward. His age, he just turned 78, has long been a knock on his campaign, and now with the specter of a recent heart attack added to the mix, it's going to make the argument that he is up to the job that much more difficult. Still, Sanders has a remarkable endurance, and he's been very healthy for most of his life. At this point, after a short break, he seems prepared to pick right up where he left off. Boris and Christy?
Ryan Nobles, thank you for that. Let's bring back in CNN political commentator Errol Lewis. Errol, look, Sanders is 78 years old. He's raised more money than just about any other Democrat. He recently just had a heart attack, but for 3 days, the campaign didn't really tell anyone about the severity of the situation. What do you make of that?
Well, that's right. In fact, they very specifically, Boris, tried to get all of us in the news media to not use the words heart attack. And I think people mostly adhered to that. We kind of waited until it was official. The distinction for viewers is that some part of the heart tissue actually dies. Then they call it a heart attack as opposed to anything else. But I mean, look, the campaign was doing what you could expect them to do, which is try and put the best face on this, not to make him seem as if he's going to be incapable of going forward. You know, on the other hand, you know, there's some news that they're not going to be able to cover up or spin. You know, there's according to the American Heart Association, there's a 20% chance after you've had a heart attack of having a second one. That's over a 5-year period. These are questions they're going to have to ask. It then, I think, also makes it less likely that they can avoid questions like, you know, what kind of prescription medicine has your doctor recommended? Is it statins? Is it beta blockers? What's your exercise regimen going to be? All of those are going to be relevant questions if Bernie Sanders is serious about becoming the next president.
Possibly relevant questions, too, to the fellow candidates. We know that the debate's coming up, the primary debate, October 15th. Sanders promises he's going to be there. How much of an issue do you think this is going to be that some of these younger candidates are going to pick this up?
I think they're going to tread very carefully around this question because, you know, this is a country where many, many people revere our elders, right? Where his experience and his time on the campaign trail has really drawn a lot of people to him. And Bernie Sanders cannot and should not be dismissed out of hand simply because he had a medical issue. You know, I mean, if he'd fallen down skiing or something like that, I don't think anybody would say, well, maybe you can't be president. So I think people are going to be very careful about that. On the other hand, he's going to, I think, also have to be careful and not simply dismiss it as something that's completely irrelevant. Again, you know, you look out over the horizon, if he does manage to win election next year, there'll be 4 years after that, and he would be by far the oldest president that we've ever elected.
Yeah, and he might spin this to his advantage. Sanders was on message shortly after being discharged from the hospital. He tweeted that he was fortunate to have good health care. Take a look at this tweet he sent out. He writes that no one should fear going bankrupt when a medical emergency occurs. He finishes the tweet with Medicare for all. It's probably a safe bet that he's going to use this on the stump, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, well, it's certainly right on brand. And I bet he'll be able to pull out some of those frighteningly high bills that he won't have to pay, because I'm sure he has a pretty good insurance plan to back him up. But he could certainly underscore the problem that a lot of us know about, as well as the suddenness of it. You know, you're kind of going around doing your business. He was, you know, engaged in his profession. And right in the middle of it, something unexpected happens. It should not be catastrophic financially for anybody.
Right.
Errol Lewis, always appreciate having you here. Thanks for sticking around.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks, Boris.
Sure. And get ready for the 4th Democratic presidential debate live from the battleground state of Ohio. OHIO, the CNN, and New York Times Democratic presidential debate Tuesday, October 15th, 8 p.m. Eastern.
The White House's Ukraine text messages scandal pings more State Department officials. 2 diplomats are scheduled to testify next week. We'll get reaction from a former U.S. ambassador.
And as outrage from demonstrators. 26 minutes past the hour. Welcome to Saturday. I'm Christy Paul.
And I'm Boris Sanchez, in for Victor Blackwell.
So big news this morning. A second U.S. diplomat entangled in the President Trump Ukraine controversy is expected to testify before Congress next week.
Yeah, Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the EU, is one of several U.S. diplomats that sent text messages discussing the president's goals in Ukraine. This week, those messages were handed over to the House by Kurt Volker, the former U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, after he spoke with impeachment investigators. CNN Justice correspondent Jessica Schneider has the details.
Influence on President Trump's perception of Ukraine as he tried to convince the president that Ukraine's new government was serious about stopping corruption. Volker revealed that he met in late May with President Trump, who insisted Ukraine was a corrupt country full of terrible people. The president said, "They tried to take me down." The president referring to a theory that it was Ukraine, not Russia, that interfered in the 2016 election. That has been debunked. Volker also released pages of text that show how the Trump administration, with the help of Rudy Giuliani, was determined to push Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden and his son, as well as that debunked theory. On July 25th, the day of Trump's phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky, Volker texted Zelensky's aide. Heard from the White House, assuming President Z convinces Trump he will investigate, get to the bottom of what happened in 2016, we will nail down date for visit to Washington. But Volker insisted in his statement he never took part in an effort to encourage Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden, saying the suggestion that he would be influenced in his duties as vice president by money for his son simply has no credibility to me. I know him as a man of integrity and dedication to our country. But Volker's involvement in influencing Ukrainian policy is clear from this text in early August to Rudy Giuliani. "Hi, Mr. Mayor. Had a good chat with Yermak last night. He was pleased with your phone call. Mentioned Z making a statement. Can we all get on the phone to make sure I advise Z correctly as to what he should be saying?" The statement was supposed to lay out how Ukraine would pursue corruption investigations into the 2016 election and a company Hunter Biden was involved in. But that statement was never released. On August 30th, the top American diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor, tells Volker that the president has canceled his trip to Ukraine. The next day, Taylor texts Gordon Sondland, a prominent Republican donor and U.S. ambassador to the European Union. Are we now saying that security assistance and White House meeting are conditioned on investigations? Sondland responds, "Call me." On September 9th, Taylor again brings up the point. "As I said on the phone, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign." Sondland texts back hours later, defending the president. "I believe you are incorrect about President Trump's intentions. The president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind." Volker also said in his opening statement that he did become aware that foreign aid to Ukraine was being held up at the same time he was connecting Ukrainian leadership aides with Rudy Giuliani, but Volker said he did not perceive those two issues to be linked in any way. Jessica Schneider, CNN, Washington.
Jessica, thank you. Now, there is another State Department official caught up in the questions that are swirling over Ukraine, ousted Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch. She's scheduled to give a deposition to the House Intelligence Committee next Friday. The Wall Street Journal reporting removing her from her post was a, quote, top priority for the administration after the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, complained that she was undermining efforts to investigate the Bidens. To talk about this, I want to bring in Lori Fulton. She's a former ambassador to Denmark, one of more than 50 female ambassadors who signed a letter in support of former Yovanovitch. Now, Lori, Ambassador, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. First and foremost, talk to me about what was in this letter.
Thank you, Chrissy, for inviting me to be with you today. Well, we are a group of women ambassadors serving America, and we wrote in support of Ambassador Yovanovitch because she is a very well-respected diplomat, and the way she has been treated is not only personally offensive to me to watch this happen to a diplomat that I respect, but it undermines our system of American foreign policy and the career foreign service, and I think that's just way out of line. I know Ambassador Yovanovitch. During the last half of my tenure in Denmark, she was the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for European Affairs, which made her one of my primary contacts at the Department of State. And I always found her to be intelligent, prepared, responsive, and extremely dedicated to the American point of view. So I was pleased to join my fellow women ambassadors and support of Ambassador Yovanovitch, and I look forward to hearing more about her testimony next week.
Okay, so you don't see any initial reason as to why she would be dismissed?
You know, I was in Ukraine on the 21st of June, or 21st of April, the day Zelensky was elected president. I was there as part of an election monitoring team with National Democratic Institute, NDI, International Republican Institute, IRI, was with us, and we were briefed prior to the balloting by Ambassador Yovanovitch, who was the ambassador then. And again, she was extremely well prepared. She was, you know, perfect. And then a few weeks later, after I'm back in the United States, I see that she has been dismissed from her post, and I was astounded. My initial reaction was, this is bad for the United States. Why would we, after a new president in Ukraine has been elected, a president with no political experience, why would we pull our extremely dedicated and terrific ambassador? Why would we do that? That does not benefit United States interest. So I'm dismayed that it happened, and I think it undermines our career foreign service.
Ambassador Fulton, I want to ask you about some of these texts regarding someone else you know, U.S. diplomat to Ukraine, William Taylor. On August 30th, he had a conversation with Kurt Volker, and he says President Trump canceled his trip to Ukraine. The next day, Taylor texts Gordon Sondland, again, the U.S. ambassador to the EU and a prominent Republican donor, saying this: are we now saying that security assistance in White House meetings are conditioned on investigations? Sondland said at that point, call me. And then on September 9th, Taylor texted, as I said on the phone, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign. Sondland texts hours later, I believe you're incorrect about President Trump's intentions. The president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind. You know, William Taylor, is it realistic to believe that he, a man who'd been an ambassador to Ukraine, who is a seasoned politician, would misunderstand the directives of this administration?
No. As you say, I know Bill Taylor, Ambassador Taylor, now Chargé d'Affaires for the United States in Ukraine, and he is, again, dedicated to American interests and dedicated to diplomacy. And he is as bright as they come. He's not going to misunderstand what's going on. And we don't have all of the texts here. We have whatever these few are, but his position is extremely revealing to me, that he understands that the United States is now trying to make military assistance to Ukraine contingent upon the new president saying that he will investigate an investigation that benefits President Trump politically. I'm astounded.
Real quickly before I let you go, we've heard Speaker Pelosi, even Representative Jackie Spears, refer to Rudy Giuliani as running a, quote, shadow State Department. First of all, do you believe that to be accurate? And secondly, is it uncommon for a president to have a personal attorney be as involved in foreign relations as we see Giuliani to have been?
I've never seen anything like this. I confess I do not quite understand Rudy Giuliani's role with the president. I certainly do not understand his role vis-a-vis Ukraine or United States foreign policy at all. I've never seen anything like this.
Former Ambassador Leroy Fulton, we appreciate you so much taking the time to make some time for us, I should say. Ambassador, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Court. Prince Harry is suing the owners of UK tabloid newspapers The Sun and the Daily Mirror for allegedly hacking into his phone.
Yeah, of course, his wife, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, sued the UK's The Mail on Sunday, is what it's called, claiming it illegally published a private letter to her father. CNN's Anna Stewart has more.
It's just days since Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, launched legal proceedings against the Mail on Sunday for allegedly publishing a private letter to her father. And now her husband, Prince Harry, has filed new claims against tabloid newspapers. Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the lawsuit regards the illegal interception of voicemail messages. News Group newspapers, the parent company of The Sun, have confirmed that they have received a claim. And a source at the publisher of The Mirror says it's aware of the legal proceedings, but it hasn't yet received official notification. Both papers have declined to comment on the allegations at this time. Now, the big question here is, when did this alleged voicemail interception take place? Does it date back to the so-called hacking scandal of 2005-2006? That was the hacking of royal and celebrity phones, and it engulfed those newspapers as well as the now defunct News of the World. This scandal resulted in numerous lawsuits, settlements, criminal charges, and even jail time for some journalists, as well as the multi-million-dollar wide-ranging inquiry into press standards by Lord Leveson. Prince Harry's decision to sue tabloid papers comes days after his wife's and after his extraordinary and emotional statement on the tabloid press, in which he criticised the double standards, he said, of a specific press pack which gave positive coverage of their recent trip in Africa and of his wife, but he says they vilified her for the last 9 months. It feels like the first shots of a new royal battle against the British media. Anna Stewart, CNN, London.
Anna, thank you for that. It is the rare commuter alert that you actually